Uh, Would the court reporter please read back the last question directed to Mr. Flores at the end of yesterday's session?
Question. What have you done since receipt of this letter dated October 6, 1992 from Mr. Ratcliffe to try to get the situation with your permit application resolved?
Would you answer the question, sir?
Counsel, it may have been done on the record yesterday, but just for clarity of the record, why don't we identify that letter by the exhibit number? I mean, I know we've talked about it at length and everybody knows what it is, but.
Are these in order?
Mm-hmm.
16-13, I believe. Let's just take the whole stack.
All I want to do is identify it for the record. It is 16-13. I'm sorry, thank you.
Can you answer the question, or would you like to have it repeated?
Could you repeat it, please?
Could you reread the question?
Question. What have you done since receipt of this letter dated October 6, 1992 from Mr. Ratcliffe to try to get the situation with your permit application resolved?
I had waited for, because I had been instructed by Mr. Ratcliffe that he needed to find out and investigate further, and they were going to let him know as to when it would be safe to open out there. So I was waiting for him to give me a notice, to give me an answer.
Do you mean to say that you have done nothing since receipt of this letter to try to resolve the situation yourself?
No, sir. I have tried to continue. I tried to continue paying the note on the bank. I tried to find means of solving my problem.
How have you tried to solve your problem with your inability or your claimed inability to get a permit from the city to occupy this building that you bought from the bank?
I have I tried to, since we couldn't afford to make any payments in the facility, we're already running out of means since we couldn't open the facility. I tried to get my attorney to tell the bank to quit making payments on the note. And I tried to, I also talked to my attorney, and he advised me that the liability, I was using his judgment as far as what I needed to do, and I'm waiting on, I was using his advice as to limit my liability.
Which attorney are you referring to?
Mr. Scott McLean.
That's your present attorney?
Yes, sir.
But my question is not related to what your problems are with the bank. My question is related to what you have done, if anything, to try to resolve the situation with the city's apparent refusal to give you a permit of occupancy or a building permit.
All I have done, sir, with the city is, referring to the city, I made contact with Mr. Ratcliffe, a few weeks after after the receipt of this letter, to see how it was going, but he just told me that when he knew, he would let me know. That was it.
Okay, so you're indicating that a few months after receipt of the letter dated October 6, 1992 from Mr. Ratcliffe, the city health inspector, which has been marked as Exhibit 16-13, you called him up, and he just told you that basically that he would let you know.
No, sir, I didn't say a few months. I said a few
I'm sorry,
weeks.
a few weeks. I'm sorry, I misstated that.
And I'm not sure exactly. At this time, I can't really remember.
Basically, he told you, don't call us, we'll call you.
Yes, sir.
All right, at some point, did you become concerned that you had not heard back from him?
Yes, sir, but I was also concerned that I couldn't make the note payment.
So didn't you feel at that point that it was urgent for you to get your permit so that you could begin to conduct your business from that location as soon as possible in order for you to pay that banknote?
Well, sir, I sought legal counsel and went on the advice of my legal counsel.
So at that point in time, you were more interested in getting out from under the obligation on your note to the bank than you were in opening up your business. Is that correct?
No, sir. I stressed to my legal counsel, Mr. McLean, that my wife and I were having a lot of arguments due to the fact that we were wary of the fact that a lot of competitors that are in the adjacent cities were already contemplating and opening a facility in McAllen, and we wanted to know, we wanted to do something about it, and I talked to my CPA, and he kept reminding me and telling me that there would be no way that we could not show a note of that volume in our books and not be questioned by any other bank as to try to open another facility or try to get financing for another facility. Because our main concern was the opening of another facility from a competitor.
Okay. Have I understood you correctly to say that after you received this letter from Mr. Ratcliffe,
Yes, sir.
Exhibit 16-13, that you only talked with him on one other occasion? And that was a few weeks later?
Yes, sir, approximately.
Okay. And since from that time to this date, you haven't contacted city officials about this matter at all?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Now, is it fair to say that that the city's action in denying you the permit is based on information that they received from the Texas Water Commission?
I'm going to object to that, counsel.
If you know.
I could not say.
The reason I ask you that is because you've already indicated that you've talked to Mr. Romeros and Mr. Ratcliffe.
Yes, sir.
About what it was that you claim to have learned from the Texas Water Commission when you went to their offices in Weslaco.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And on the other hand, the letter of October 6th that we've been talking about here this morning, Exhibit 16-13, also refers to Mr. Ratcliffe's conversation with a representative of the Texas Water Commission. And my question is, do you know whether the health department's decision was based solely on what you told them, or was it also based in part upon what Mr. Ratcliffe learned from the Texas Water Commission?
I don't know.
Okay. In any event, you would agree, would you not, that Mr. Ratcliffe apparently believed that there were facts to support his action in denying you your permit?
Mr. Guerra, I don't have that information. I'm not a part of the city. I don't know. I can't say that Mr. Ratcliffe made that decision on what you're asking me, so I can't say that.
You talked to him about this, did you
Yes,
not?
I did.
And you told him that about what you had learned
Yes.
at the Texas Water Commission,
Yes.
right? Okay. And following that conversation, you received this letter, Exhibit 16-13.
No, sir. Not following that conversation. Mr. Ratcliffe investigated the problem in Austin. Called up a few people and seeked legal counsel from the city attorney. To my understanding, those were the things that he said he was going to do. I don't know what exactly it was that he did.
Okay. But the letter that we've been talking about here this morning, that came after your conversation with Mr. Ratcliffe.
After various conversations with
Okay.
Mr. Ratcliffe.
Right. Right. So apparently, he believed that he had some facts to support his decision in recommended denial of your permit application, correct?
I can't say that. I mean, what Mr. Ratcliffe does, Mr. Guerra, is Mr. Ratcliffe, I can't know. I don't know what's going on.
But didn't you, in these two occasions when you talked to him, after you received this letter, didn't you, you said you called him, didn't you talk to him about it?
Yes, sir. I talked to him about it.
And what did he say?
He said that he had talked to the city attorney, and he had talked to somebody up in Austin with the Texas Water Commission, and the city attorney had advised him not to give me a permit due to the fact that there was some contamination. There was a problem out there. And that he would continue to investigate the problem, and until such time till the problem was solved, or until he had information from the Texas Water Commission that it was safe to open, then they would let me know.
Okay. Now, are you saying that Mr. Ratcliffe told you that the city attorney told him or ordered him not to give you the permit, or are you saying that the Texas Water Commission ordered him not to give you the permit?
No, sir.
Or both?
I'm saying that he said to me in the conversation, I can't remember word for word, but he had said that he had consulted with the city attorney, and that he had, based on the report on the investigation that he had done with the Texas Water Commission somewhere up in Austin, that they felt that the city was not able to give me a permit. He didn't tell me what the context was, or who ordered him or anything as
Okay.
far as.
And this was a phone conversation that occurred a few weeks after your receipt of this letter dated October 6th, correct?
No, this was a telephone conversation that I had a few days after I received this letter.
All right, now we're talking about another phone conversation, sir. I'm trying to pin you down as best I can on how many conversations you've had with the city officials after this letter of October 6th. Now you're coming up with another one, okay?
Mr. Guerra, I cannot remember exactly, specifically, I can't give you a date specifically.
I'm not asking you for a specific date. I'm asking you for the number of times you've talked to Mr. Ratcliffe or any city official about this problem with your permit after you received this letter of October 6th, 1992.
Sir, I talked to him various times. I can't remember exactly how many times I talked to him. It's
Well,
been a while back.
you've identified at least two of them.
At least two.
Okay, one of them, now you say, occurred a few days after receipt of this letter?
Yes, I called him to verify that I had received this letter.
All right, and that's when you talked about his consultation with the city attorney and his investigation with the Texas Water Commission?
No, sir, I talked about that before I got this letter.
So, and that occurred a few days before?
Yes, sir, because he called me to let me know what he had found out and that he would be following up with a letter.
Okay, all right. Now, so this conversation that you just described a minute ago, that occurred a few days before, and he followed it up with this letter.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now after this letter of October 6, 1992,
Yes, sir.
Did you only have one other conversation with him about it 2 or
I-
3 weeks later when he told you, basically, I don't have any further information for you. As soon as I get it, I'll let you know. Something to that effect. Don't call us, we'll call you.
I vaguely remember having a conversation with him a few days after this letter, that I got this letter, just to let him know that I had received this letter. We stayed at the same, he went over the contents of the letter with me, and that was it. And a few weeks later, I called him to see if he knew anything about it, any changes, and that's when he basically told me, don't call us, we'll call you. There was a general idea. It's not
Yeah,
what he said,
right,
but that was
yeah.
the idea.
Okay. Now, you must have been aware at this point that Mr. Ratcliffe, with the city of McAllen, was relying on information, at least in part, obtained from the Texas Water Commission. Is that correct?
It would seem so.
Okay. Did you contact the Texas Water Commission
No, sir.
at this point in time?
No, sir.
Did you contact them at any point from that point in time to the present?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because when I went to go and try to get some copies from Westlaco, I was told that once the report was out, I would have to do all my questioning or get any copies from Austin, and I really didn't know there were various departments, various numbers. At that time, I communicated communicated that to my attorney, and I let him handle it from there.
All right. So when did you first, I see, you engaged your attorney the day after you received this letter. That was October 7th.
Counsel, he retained me formally the day after this letter was written.
He had been in to see you before, I understand that.
Well, no, the point I was trying to make is that he had testified earlier that this letter was mailed to him, and so we don't know when he actually received it.
Well, is the letter addressed to the proper address?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're not saying you didn't receive it, are you?
No, sir.
Okay, and so after receipt of this letter, you didn't contact the Texas Water Commission, whether here in Wesco or Austin or anywhere else, from the time of the receipt of this letter to the present?
Not that I can recall, sir.
Is it also fair to say that you did not call anybody with Coastal Mart Inc. or Coastal Remediation or anybody affiliated with Coastal Mart following that one phone conversation that you had with Mr. Brian Swales in July of '92?
I can't recall a conversation, no, sir.
Okay. And you didn't communicate with them in writing either?
Not that I can recall, sir.
Now-
Other than through plaintiff's original petition.
Right, sure. And this original petition was filed on October 19th, 1992, correct? I'll represent to you that it was, show you the dates, my date stamped copy.
Council will stipulate as to the date of filing.
Okay? Um, Would you agree that to the extent that the question of whether or not there is sufficient level of contamination out there to constitute a risk to a significant risk to the health, safety, or welfare of the occupants of that building, to the extent that that determination is an error, that the Texas Water Commission and the City of McAllen also are partly responsible for any damages that you may have sustained.
Council, I'm going to object to that question because I don't believe that the assumption is supported by any evidence. If
I agree it's not supported by any evidence. That's what I'm getting to.
What's the argument on the table so I can enjoy it?
And furthermore, on the ground it calls for a legal conclusion on the part of the witness.
Let me try to break it down. See if I can meet your objection. You have indicated that you observed some document while reviewing the Texas Water Commission's file which suggested, or which expressly stated, that there was a high risk of harm to the occupants of any of that building, to any occupants of the building that you bought from the bank as a result of the contamination, or as a result of the leak of the underground storage tanks from Coastal Mart.
No, sir, I never said that to the occupants of the building, because when I saw the report, the report had said nothing about the contamination of the building.
Well, where did you get, what did you say? I mean, I thought that's what you meant. Maybe I just misunderstood you. What did you mean?
That I saw some notations from one of the Texas Water Commission inspectors where they had said that the procedure they were doing to take out the gasoline from the holes where the gas tanks were was wrong, and that they were using buckets, something to the effect of buckets, and that the fire marshal was going to be contacted that they were doing it because there was a high level of gasoline spilled, and that there was the way they were doing, the procedure they were using was wrong, that the contamination level seemed to be very high. I mean, something to that effect. I don't remember exactly, but I remember vaguely. I never said anything about the building or the clients or anybody inside the building getting contaminated.
All right. This report that you talked about yesterday from this person whose first name is Jan,
Yes, sir.
who used to work for the Texas Water Commission, is this the report that you say that you reviewed?
I reviewed, yes, sir.
Okay. So basically, you're saying, and maybe I misunderstood you, and I'm sorry. That's one of the reasons why we're going through this, so I can make sure I know what your position is.
Yes, sir.
What you reviewed in that file, in the Texas Water Commission file, simply were criticisms of the procedure for removal of the product. Is that correct?
Partially, yes, sir.
Okay. What was not completely accurate about that statement?
That there was also, it stated there was some contamination.
Okay, some contamination.
Yes, sir.
Did you see anything in that report or that file that you reviewed that suggested that the level of contamination was significant enough to pose a threat to the health, safety, or general welfare of anybody in the area?
Counsel, I'm going to lodge an objection to that question because we are not tendering Mr. Flores as an expert in this area, and so obviously he's not qualified to say one way or the other as to whether anything in the Texas Water Commission file would indicate that there was a health risk. If you're asking him, did he see a statement that says that there is a high risk to health based on contamination, whether he saw such a statement, then I'll allow him to answer it. But if you're asking him by reviewing the file, did he see anything in the file that would indicate a risk, a health risk, then he's not qualified to answer that question.
I understand that the witness may not be qualified to render any scientific opinions. All I'm asking him is, from his review of the file and his review of this particular report, whether he saw anything that suggested to him, as a layman, that there was a significant threat to the health, safety, or general welfare of anybody on or around the property that he bought from the bank. That's all. And I think he's competent to answer that.
I'll allow him to answer the question, Counsel.
Mr. Guerra, I saw a whole bunch of stacks, and I saw a whole bunch of papers, and I saw a lot of them that I just can't remember. I don't remember specifically. I can't remember all the documents that I saw. The only one that sticks out in my mind, and basically because of the procedure, was that one that from Inspector Jan, I forgot his last name.
Okay. But you did say that you saw something that either said or suggested to you that there was a high level of contamination underground, correct?
I saw something, but I can't remember exactly what. I can't remember exactly.
What do you remember whether or not they were talking about contamination below the surface or above the surface?
I don't remember, because in the first place there was a lot of there was some terminology that I did not understand.
Okay. I recall on the first day of the testimony, when we were going through the documents that you produced, or the documents that we requested you to produce, and we started talking about this a little bit, and I remember you telling me that basically you didn't really know what it was, because there was a lot of scientific terms that were being used, and et cetera, and I appreciate that, okay? But throughout the course of this deposition, you've been using words like a high degree of risk, terms of art, which suggests to me that you have seen some documents or reviewed some documents that suggest that. And all I'm trying to do is find out where you're getting that information from. Do you think at this time, just as and I know you're not an expert, okay, but from your own opinion as a layperson, do you think that there is a significant risk of harm to the health, safety, or welfare of anybody on or around that building?
Counsel, I'm going to have to object to that question. I know you're asking him as a layperson, but I don't think that's information that's within the province of a layperson. I think it's information which, by its very definition, can only come from expert witnesses. And so it would be very misleading for him to answer one way or the other on that, and I'm not going to allow him to answer that
Well,
question.
please certify the question. I think that he has reviewed information, or if he's talked to other people that have told him that, then he can have that information, whether it's hearsay or not, and whether he's competent to testify as an expert. He's got information. If he's got information within his own personal knowledge from whatever source, he can testify to that, and that's what I'm asking him about.
Counsel, you know as well as I do that only experts can rely on hearsay information in forming such opinions, and really can only render such opinions. And we can argue about this at the appropriate time. There's no use taking up the record to do so.
Please certify the question. You've indicated that you really don't know from the documents that you reviewed whether or not they said that there was any risk of harm to the health, safety, or general welfare of anybody on or around that property that you bought from the bank. Isn't that correct? You really don't know.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, have you talked to anybody at the Texas Water Commission that has told you that?
Yes, sir, I did talk to somebody
Who-
that told me that there was some contamination.
No, that's not my question. I will stipulate that there is some contamination. Okay?
Yes, sir.
That's not the issue here. The issue is, what is the level of that contamination? Is it significant enough to pose a threat to the health, safety, or welfare of anybody on or around that property? Now, my question is, have you talked to anybody at the Texas Water Commission about that issue?
No, sir.
You didn't talk to anybody at the Texas Water Commission about that issue before you filed this lawsuit against my client?
Can you repeat the question again, the first question, please?
Yes.
Rephrase it a little.
Did you talk to anybody at the Texas Water Commission about whether or not the level of contamination under the property that you bought from the bank was significant enough to pose a threat to the health, safety, or welfare of anybody on or around that property?
I remember asking that question, yes, sir, to somebody, one of that same inspector.
Which
But
inspector?
The gentleman that gave me that one copy.
Was this
But
Jan or
No, sir,
this?
the gentleman in Westlaco, but he didn't give me any information as to the level of contamination.
Okay.
I did ask that question.
All right. Okay. Did you ever get an answer to that question before you filed this lawsuit on October 19th, 1992,
From the Texas Water Commission.
from the Texas Water Commission?
No, sir.
Did you ever get an answer to that question from anybody before filing this lawsuit on October 19th, 1992?
I didn't get an answer. I got a warning that I needed to be very careful about my liability.
Okay, and that was from the attorney that you mentioned earlier,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Villegas.
That I needed to be very aware, and that's when he alarmed me.
Okay. Now, you say that this conversation with Mr. Villegas took about 15 minutes, right? Because he was on his way out somewhere.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What information other than what you told him did Mr. Villegas review when he gave you that information?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Did you take any documents to Mr. Villegas for him to review during this 15-minute conversation?
I can't recall if I did or not. I can't recall that I did.
Other than what you told Mr. Villegas about the problem, did he have any more information at his disposal when he gave you that advice?
He wanted to investigate the problem, but it was up to me whether I retained him or not at that time.
Please answer my question, sir. Did Mr. Villegas have any other information at his disposal when he gave you that advice?
No, sir.
Okay. So, prior to the filing of this lawsuit against my client on October 19th, 1992, you had no information from any source whatsoever that the level of contamination under your property that you bought from the bank was significant enough to pose a threat to the health, safety, or welfare of anybody on or around the property.
I had the information from the city of McAllen, from the health department.
Are you referring to the letter of October
Yes,
6th?
sir.
Okay, and that was the only thing?
That's the whole issue.
Okay. I just want to clarify exactly what your actions are based on, okay? And now we know it's the letter of October 6th of 1992.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, I'll return to my original question, and that is that if there's no basis in fact, okay, for the city's denial of your permit application, based on this leakage of the underground storage tank at the Coastal Mart, okay, would you agree that they are partially responsible for any damages that you may have sustained?
Counsel, I've already objected to that question, and I'll object again. You're asking him to assume that there is no basis in fact. That hasn't been established, number one. And number two, you're asking him for a legal conclusion, which he's not capable of giving.
Are you instructing him not to answer?
Yes.
Okay, please certify the question. I think it's a very simple and straightforward question. You have indicated that you filed this lawsuit against my client because there was a leakage of an underground storage tank that they had on their property, which migrated over to your property, and that as a result of that, it caused the city of McAllen not to grant you the permits that you required to use the building that you bought from the bank. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Okay. Now, my question is, to the extent that that there was no threat or no serious threat to the health, safety, or welfare of anybody on or around your property, isn't it fair to say that any damages that you might have sustained are at least partly the fault of the city?
Counsel, if I've been very tolerant throughout the 3 days of depositions.
And I have too, sir. I have too, because I have sat here for 3 days and gotten unresponsive answers to my questions.
Counsel, we can stop the deposition right now if you'd like.
I'd like to finish.
Well,
I'd like to finish.
Then let's not plow the same ground. You can make me object 3 times to the same question. You can come and ask it 1,000,000 times. I'm going to object every time, and I'm going to tell him not to answer every time. You've already certified the question. We're going to have to go to the court and get a resolution of the issue, counsel. And all we're doing is wasting everybody's time, and it's already been a very lengthy experience. He was noticed for a 4-hour deposition, and we're now in the 3rd day of it.
Are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you think, sir, that the city of McAllen has done anything wrong in connection with your application for a permit for the use of the building that you bought from the bank?
Could you rephrase that, please?
Do you think that the city of McAllen has done anything wrong in connection with your application for the permit to use or occupy the property that you bought from the bank?
I don't know. I can't answer that question because I don't really know.
Would you agree that if they were mistaken in their conclusion that there was a significant hazard or danger to the health, safety, or welfare of anybody on or around that property, that they should have given you the permit?
Counsel, for the 4th time, I'm going to object to the question. I'm going to instruct the witness not to answer.
Mr. Flores, how much do you want from Coastal Mart, Inc.? What are your claimed damages here? Let's tell the jury about that.
Counsel, he's not going to tell the jury anything. If you want to ask him questions, you can ask him questions.
What are you asking the jury to award you in terms of damages in this case?
Counsel, he can talk about specific items. You know as well as I do that the measure of damages in a case like this is ongoing. It depends when we go to trial. It depends on a lot of factors. And I'm not going to allow my client to give you a specific number in damages that he wants right now because it's incapable of being fixed at this point in time. We can talk about measures of damages.
How much do you, what are your damages to date, in your opinion?
I haven't begun to sum them up yet. I haven't even begun to get an idea.
Do you agree with the principle that a person should only be responsible for those damages that his or her conduct caused somebody?
Conduct as opposed to negligence, counsel?
Acts or omissions. Do you agree that my client should only be held responsible for your damages to the extent that their acts or omissions caused them?
Counsel will stipulate to what the law is in this regard.
I'm asking Mr. Flores because I'm not sure he understands that.
Well, counsel, this is getting argumentative and it's getting ridiculous. If you want to take his deposition and ask him facts, if you want to ask him philosophical questions on whether he agrees with the law, then I'm going to stop the deposition, which I'm getting dangerously close to doing anyway.
I think that my client is entitled to know
Whether he agrees with the law?
No, I think that my client is entitled to know what they're being sued for.
Counsel, you've got an original petition. You know what you're being sued for.
The original petition does not tell me how much you're seeking.
Well, then specially accept,
Okay.
counsel. You know that's the way it works. And that wasn't the last question that you asked him. You'd already asked him that question, and he answered it.
Do you think that the Texas Water Commission or the City of McAllen have done anything wrong in connection with your application for this permit?
Counsel, objection asked and answered as to the city of McAllen.
Oh,
If you want to break it down as to the Texas.
It
Water
hasn't been
Commission.
answered.
It has as to the city of McAllen.
You said you didn't know. To the City of McAllen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that your same response as to the Texas Water Commission?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I take it that's why you didn't sue them,
Counsel,
right? Because you just didn't know.
counsel, I made the decision as to who was going to be sued in this case, based on the evidence and the facts as were presented to me.
Mr. Flores, as I have understood your testimony to date, you still don't know, as you sit here today, whether or not the level of contamination out there is sufficient to endanger the health, safety, or welfare of anybody on that property or around that property, and yet you sued my client.
Counsel, I'm going to object to that. I've already objected to a previous question. He's not an expert witness. You know as well as I do that there will be expert witnesses presented from both sides that will speak to that issue in this case.
Well, I would renew my request for any documents in your possession, custody, or control that would support that assertion, sir. Now, you've indicated on the record, your attorney has anyway, that you've got a complete file from the Texas Water Commission. I'd like to see anywhere in the Texas Water Commission file a document that supports that assertion. I think I'm entitled to that.
Counsel, are you going to represent to me that Coastal does not have a complete Texas Water Commission file?
I do not have a complete copy of the
That's
Texas
not what
Water
I asked
Commission
you.
file.
Does Coastal have a complete?
I
Water
do not
Commission
have it.
file?
I've requested it. You have it, and you didn't bring it.
Counsel, let me inform you of something. Do you know what the Texas Water Commission file consists of?
What does it consist of?
It consists of reports from Coastal. That's all it consists of, is reports from Coastal. And you're asking for us to go to Austin, pay money, obtain records from your own client, and produce them to you.
No, sir. I'm
Counsel.
asking for you to provide me with copies of things that you have already obtained from the Texas Water Commission by your own statements on the record in this case.
Counsel, you know the rules as well as I do. If it's from a public record, if you have equal access to it, I don't have to produce it to you at my expense.
Do you have, sir, any documents that are responsive to my request on damages from the Texas Water Commission or from any other source?
Counsel, this is a deposition. This is not a point. Let's go over to the courtroom and we can have these discussions in the courtroom. If you want to file a request for production like I did 90 days ago or 120 days ago, then do so.
May
Well,
suggest-
I will just remind you that you have been subpoenaed, your client has been subpoenaed to produce these documents. You have them in your possession, custody, control. I'll be happy to provide you with a reimbursement for the expense of those. If they, in fact, only contain, if this file of the Texas Water Commission only contains documents that my client has submitted, then fine, so be it. But I think I'm entitled to know if there's anything else in there. And you
Counsel-
got it.
Counsel, you've had all the time in the world to go and get the Texas Water Commission file. You have equal access to that. It's not something that only I have access to. It's a public
All right.
record.
May I suggest a 5-minute break, everybody kind of get their thoughts together?
Yeah. that
Mr.
might be
Mr.
good.
Flores, I don't want to break. Mr. Flores, are you aware of any document anywhere that would support the contention that the level of the contamination under the property that you have purchased from the bank poses a threat to the health, safety, or welfare of anybody on or around that property? Other than this letter from Mr. Ratcliffe of October 6th, 1992.
Counsel, I'm going to object to the question, and I'm going to object because, as I said before, he's not an expert witness.
I'm just asking if he's aware, counsel. If he's not aware, fine. Let's
Well,
let him answer.
But the point is, counsel, that there may be documents that indicate that. If he's not an expert, he won't know whether the document indicates that.
Well, that's fine. To his knowledge, he's not aware. That's fine. Is that your response? I just want a response, and I think I'm entitled to it. I'll stipulate that he's not an expert.
If you're asking, has he seen any documents other than the October 6th letter, that state there's a high level of, whatever it was, a high health risk out there, then he can answer that. And I think he already has.
I think you have to. I just want to make it clear. Is it fair to say, sir, that this letter from Mr. Ratcliffe of October 6, 1992 is the only document that you're aware of that indicates that there's a hazard to the health, safety, or welfare of anybody on or around the property that you bought from the bank, as far as you know? I thought you had already answered that before, but just want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Excellent.
Now let's talk about what your claimed damages are. Okay. What is the nature of the damages that you think you have sustained as a result of this leakage of the underground storage tanks at Coastal Marine?
That I haven't been able to open up the facility.
And what are you saying by that? That had you been able to open up the facility, that you would have made money?
Yes, sir.
And that because you were unable to open it, that you lost some profits? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Because you realize, of course, that you've got expenses in operating a business, right?
Yes, sir.
Those expenses have to be deducted from your gross income.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're saying that had you been allowed to open the business, you would have made a profit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, what are the facts that you rely on to support that assertion?
The facility that I currently operate.
Okay. What is it about the facility that you currently operate that supports the proposition that you would have made any profits on the second location?
Income tax returns, financial reports.
Okay. When would you have opened the business at this new location?
It's hard to say.
Well, we need to know it in order to start to be able to get anywhere near determining what your damages are.
I'd have to go back to my documents and look at my notes, my bills, receipts, and look at dates to be specific.
Well, would you agree with me that as we sit here today, you have still not finished the punch list that the Texas Department of Health required you to comply with in the letter dated November 4th, 1991, and previously marked as Florida's Exhibit number 3-1?
Objection has to answer.
Correction, that's 3-1A. 3-1 was the letter, 3-1A was the copy of the letter that you checked off I think 6 or 7 items that you didn't comply with as of that date. And now I'm asking you, as we sit here today, have you complied with all of the items listed on this letter of November 4th, 1991 from the Texas Department of Health?
Have I complied?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. So, because you had not complied with every single one of those items to this date, you wouldn't have gotten a license from the Texas Department of Health. Is that correct?
If I had not complied, yes, I would not have gotten a license.
And if you had not gotten a license from the Texas Department of Health, you would not have been able to operate the business from that location. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is it also true that the electrical work that needed to be done as of April 15th of 1991 also has not been accomplished as we sit here today?
Could you repeat that, please?
The electrical work that was noted in the city's records that had not been accomplished by April 15th, 1991 has not been accomplished to this date, has it?
I can't remember that it was. I would have to go to the building and check.
Well, see, didn't you tell us that? Oh, so you don't know?
No, because at the time that it was happening, we were already. I had already discussed it with the electrician, and he said he was going to fix it. It was no major problem, and I understood that he had. I would need to go call up the electrician again and find out.
But didn't you also say that you told the guy to quit doing any further work?
Yes, I did.
And so what you're saying is you don't know if he had already completed it or not?
No, sir.
At the time you told him that?
I don't know.
Well, do you know whether he had completed it at the time you told him to quit doing any further work?
No, sir. I do not know.
Well, when can you find out for us?
I have to call him up and look him up and go out to the location and find out.
But you told us you didn't know how to get a hold of the electrician.
I never said that.
Oh, how can we get a hold of the electrician?
I said I didn't know his name. I didn't recall his name.
Do you recall it now?
I saw some documentation to remind me that his first name is, or his name is Roles Electric.
Which
Electric.
one? Which one?
Roles Electric.
And where does he operate from? Far. And who was the electrician in charge? Is it a guy named Roles?
Yes, sir. Role.
Roles?
R-O-L-E-S. I think that's what it says on the business card.
Okay, and so you would agree, would you not, that if he had not completed the electrical work that the city wanted done, that you would have not, there would have been independent grounds for the city to deny you your permit?
I wouldn't agree with that.
And why is that?
Because if Mr. Roles Electric would not have been able to do it, I would have found somebody that would have.
That's fine. I'm just asking you to agree that you need to do what the city tells you to do as far as electrical work is concerned,
Yes,
before
sir.
you get a permit from them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the fact is that you don't know whether or not that's been done at this, as we sit here today.
I do not know.
Okay. Well, have you gotten, you haven't gotten any communication from the city that's been done, right?
No, sir.
Have you been contacted by the city after April 15th, 1991 to tell you that it needed to be done?
April 15th, 1991?
Right. If you'll recall, that was the date on the note in the city's building inspection file, where they last indicated it had not been done.
92, Council.
I'm sorry, 92. 92.
Excuse me, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, as you'll recall, there was a notation in one of the cities, as a matter of fact, I think you got it in front of you. Let me just refer to it specifically. Referring your attention to Florida's exhibit number 16-3.
Yes, sir.
These notes indicate that as of 4/15/92, the electrical work had not been completed to the satisfaction of the city.
Yes, sir.
My question to you is, did you have any communications with any people from the city after that date indicating to you that the work had or had not been completed?
I don't recall.
Okay. Given us your understanding of the parking issue, you've indicated that as far as you were concerned, it had been resolved.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If that were not the case, as far as the city was concerned, would you agree that that would have to be taken care of before you could get a permit to operate your business?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that, please?
Yeah.
I didn't understand.
Okay. I raised the issue in questioning you over the last couple of days about a parking permit problem
Yes, sir.
that you had with the city.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you've indicated to us that as far as you were concerned, that they accepted your proposal and that the issue had been resolved.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But we've also learned that there's nothing in writing that you're aware of that documents that fact. And my question is, to the extent that that's not the city's understanding, that issue was resolved, would you agree that you would have to get it resolved before you could get a permit to use that building?
No, sir. I was going to, since you asked me that question, I wanted you to look at Florida's Exhibit 1611 on the left-hand side, where it says right here, I talked to Mr. Flores at 4:05 p.m. and told him city planning department would sign a permit for his project with 3 conditions as per Julio, I don't know what.
Discussion?
Discussion with them. He said he agreed with and
With-
wanted to get us a letter to the effect and lease agreement, or, well, I can't tell that word, whatever, something for the parking of the vans. He will need a building permit for work to be done, letter specifically to say that it's required, I can't really tell, shuttled in it,
Okay.
but I did get a building permit to construct, so that indicated to me that the city had accepted my proposal.
I'm not questioning what your understanding was, okay? What I'm suggesting to you that there's a series of letters in here that a reasonable person might conclude the issue had not been resolved. We don't know, you know, apparently somebody's writing a notation after this to Luis saying you still gotta have 20 staff parking spaces.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
but it clearly states right there that they would sign a permit.
Fine.
Would sign.
All I'm saying to you is, or I'm asking to you, is if the city has a problem with your lack of sufficient parking spaces over there, that would keep you from getting a permit to use this building. Isn't that so?
If they had a problem.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, do you know whether anybody approached the well, no, strike that.
Those are weird,
Well,
convenient
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, we're okay, Mr. Flores, are there any other damages that you think that you've sustained as a result of the denial of your permit, your building permit and your occupancy permit?
Yes, sir.
Okay, which are those?
Value of the property, building.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was reading that paper.
The diminution of value of the property has been.
Can you rephrase that, please?
Yes, sir. What, you say you think that the property has lost value as a result of all of this, correct?
Yes, sir.
How much value do you think it has lost as a result of this?
I couldn't even begin to say, sir. I'm not an expert in that.
Have you talked to anybody who is or who holds himself or herself out to be an expert in this area?
No, not yet.
Do you have any idea from any source whatsoever what the amount of the diminution of the value of your property is, if any?
No, sir. Not yet.
Okay. So right now, I take it from that last answer that you haven't seen any documents that support or just tend to support your assertion that the property has been devalued.
Not at this time.
Okay. You identified your CPA earlier to talk about, as a person who might have knowledge of the extent of your lost profits. I'm going back to the lost profits issue now because I didn't ask you this. Is that the only person that you know of at this time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And have you seen any documents that support or tend to support that assertion, other than the income tax returns that you've produced to us and the unaudited financial statements?
Counsel, we had also produced, or actually, Mr. Ramirez produced from the bank's file the profit projections that had been provided to the bank at the time the loan was made, that were produced by the CPA.
Right. Those three documents, corporate income tax returns, unaudited financial statements, and your projections of the income to be produced by this enterprise. Any other documents that you know of?
That I know of, no.
Okay. Are there any other damages that you feel that you've sustained as a result of this matter?
Health health damages.
Okay. That's to both you and your wife?
Yes, sir.
When did your health problems begin?
Our health problems began at the time that we first found out about the contamination.
So that would have been around July 92?
No, sir.
June 92?
I can't be specific at this time because I don't have a specific date.
Okay. And what are the nature of your health problems? Would it be fair to say it'd be sometime in the summer of 92?
No, sir. I couldn't say that either.
Okay. What are the nature of your health problems?
The acceleration of my gallbladders, and my gallbladder stones, and my wife's high blood pressure, her spastic colon, and the fact that she been wanted to, we had planned to have another child in 92, and she was very, due to the fact that we had some problems with the first child, she didn't want to have any of the nervousness or any of the gas and bloating that she was feeling, have the child suffer. So we have not, to this date, have not wanted to have, she does not want to have another child, even though I've wanted to, because she doesn't want to harm the child.
Anything else?
Headaches, loss of sleep.
Who's having headaches and loss of sleep?
My wife, myself.
Both of you are having headaches and loss of sleep?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else?
Arguments, excessive arguments. We have come to the point of almost getting a divorce from each other because she blames me and for the decisions, even though I know that she was with me. We have argued excessively.
Okay. Anything else?
That's, I can't think of anything else right now.
You have used, and I appreciate, the answer, but throughout the course of the deposition, you've continued to use the phrase, at this time or right now, I can't think of anything else. And one of the reasons things lasting so long is because I'm not going to get a chance to talk to you again before trial. And I want to make sure that I know exactly, what your complaints are,
Mr.
so that I'm not surprised at that time.
Mr. Guerra, we really haven't had a chance to think about our damages because we haven't even begun to think about our damages because we were so concerned with our competition coming to town, with the bank and accelerating the note, all the problems. And apart from that, we have to still concentrate in making sure that the facility that we are running still has to operate on a day-to-day basis. We have inspections that we go through. So, I mean, we have a lot of things that are on our minds that we have not even began to sit down with our attorney and discuss our damages.
Okay. Let's concentrate on you for a little bit, okay? We kind of discussed this earlier, and I'll try not to belabor anything that we've done before.
Yes, sir.
You said that you were hospitalized and that the gallstones were removed.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes.
When did that happen?
That happened in May.
Of 92?
2.
And how long were you hospitalized?
About approximately 4 days.
What were the medical expenses that you incurred in connection with that hospitalization?
There are various medical expenses. I don't have a total list of them.
Can you give me a ballpark figure? I'm not going to hold you to the exact, because we can get the records, okay? I just want to have an idea of what we're talking about here.
Oh, somewhere between 6 and 10 grand. I can't. I mean, I can't.
Is that figure, is that range solely for the hospitalization, or is it for the treatment from the doctor before, when the condition got accelerated up to and including the hospitalization and thereafter? Did that make sense? Did you understand what my
I
question
understand
was?
what you're saying.
What I'm trying to do, sir, is trying to find out what are the total medical expenses that you attribute to the problems you had with the acceleration of your gallbladder stone condition. From the time it accelerated to the time to the present.
I really couldn't say because, first of all, I have an insurance company that paid a lot of the bills. And there are still some bills that are pending, and I have right now. We're trying to make sure that the insurance company has not paid all the bills, and I have not put the majority of them together. So I mean, I don't know. I couldn't. I mean, I'm speculating.
All right.
I don't want to speculate.
Okay, that's fine. What insurance company did you submit these bills to?
Statesman National.
And where are they located?
Houston.
Who are you submitting them to?
To one of their claim officers. There are various claim officers.
Okay. Do they have only one office in Houston? If you know.
Yes, sir. One office.
Okay. You know, Counselor, I'd like to make a request for production for the applications for reimbursement or the receipts for payment or something that will tell us, you know, who we need to contact to find out what they've paid and what has been charged. Okay. Is this insurance company paying 80% of your costs?
It's 100% after a $500 deductible.
Okay.
That's a point that we're trying to get cleared because there's 80, 20, and 100 after 500. And
So is there an ongoing dispute at this time with Statesman National?
no, they wanted records of the doctor's bills, and I wouldn't call it a dispute. They need to clarify some. They've been trying to clarify some information.
Are they taking the position that there may be some items that they would pay 100% for and some items they would pay 80% for?
No, sir. They're trying to decipher whether we had originally applied for the 100% $500 deductible, which is what we do. There are some claim officers that have proof of that, and there are some other claim officers that are claiming otherwise. So what ended up happening is that we've gotten all the copies. They've requested copies from the doctors' offices to be sent over to their offices. Let's see. And they were going to make a decision on some of the bills that are still pending, and they wanted to know how much of the deductible we had paid. Okay. And once they determined that, then they would go ahead and reimburse us or pay out the bills.
But you're telling us that as far as you're concerned, you got 100% coverage.
Yes, sir, and we do have
Okay.
verification of that.
All right. Now, you knew, of course, that you had gallbladder stones before May of '92. Is that correct?
No, sir, I did not know I had gallbladder stones.
Did the surgical procedure clear up the problem that required you to be hospitalized? I mean, they took the gallbladder stones out, did they not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And after they took the gallbladder stones out, you no longer had any problems with them, correct?
Problems with,
With your bladder? With these?
I still have diarrheal problems. I went, Dr. Godinez referred me to a specialist,
Who did he refer you to?
Dr.
Are these the doctors that you mentioned to us earlier?
Yes, sir. The same, you have his name, Behara.
Okay. Why did he send you there?
Because I still couldn't get my, the diarrhea problems cleared away. And, you know, I went to go see Dr. Behara, and he claimed to me, or he stated to me that I had a lot of the reasons that I could not get the problem resolved was because the bile that is released from this, I guess, the stomach into the gallbladder, is supposed to be picked up by the gallbladder, was now going directly to the liver. And then with the stress that I was and the tension that I was having, the nerves in the stomach were causing diarrhea. And so he recommended that I start drinking Metamucil.
Okay, and have you followed the instructions of the doctor?
Yes, sir.
And you say you still have these problems?
Well, sir, I sometimes now with that I get pain in my intestines.
But you're not continuing to have diarrhea problems, are you?
On and off, and I have to let the doctor know.
How frequently do you have diarrhea problems?
I'd say every 15-20 days I start having a problem, and then I also let go of the Metamucil, and once I get my problem cleared away, I start drinking it again.
Okay, and the problem goes away after, relatively soon after you do the take your medicine?
About 4 or 5 days a week.
So you're saying that every time this happens, every 15 days, that it lasts 4 or 5 days?
Well, I wouldn't say exactly every 15 days. I would say approximately.
Okay, that's fine.
It'll last approximately about a week, and
Are you talking about Okay.
5 days. And it really happens mainly when I get a lot of tension.
Did any of these doctors tell you that there was any physical reason why you were having this diarrhea problem, as opposed to the nervous condition that you've identified?
Physical?
Yeah, because I understood your answer to suggest that there was some problem with your the glands that secrete this bile and how it gets transmitted.
No, the Dr. Behara informed me that the bile that was getting picked up by the gallbladder, because I had my gallbladder removed, would now go straight, you know, to the liver and I guess into the stomach. I'm not an expert on this. I only remember vaguely what he told me. And he said that the bile needed to be, that the Metamucil would help the bile and my stomach, how do you say, it wouldn't make it loose anymore. It would gather it up.
Okay. But what I'm asking you really, I guess, is whether or not the condition of your organs are responsible for that, as opposed to any nervousness that you may have.
I couldn't say. I'm not a doctor. Didn't.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. Did the doctor tell you that your diarrhea problem is caused solely by the nervousness that you've described, or is it caused by other physical problems that you have internally in your organs inside your body?
When I talked to him, he said that it was caused by the tension and the nervousness in my stomach.
All right. Now, the headaches that you say that you've gotten,
Yes.
when did these begin?
These headaches began I would say almost immediately after we found out, because we started having, my wife and I started having disputes over the facility and over the problems that we were starting to find out about them.
When you found out what, sir?
When I found out about the contamination.
Okay, but you still haven't told us when that was. Is
I'm
it?
I can't be specific, Mr. Guerra, because I don't remember at this point.
Don't you have any documentation at all in your possession that you could use to refresh your recollection about that?
Unfortunately, no, I don't.
And you don't think it's fair to say that would it have to be sometime in the summer of '92, based on everything that we reviewed here?
No, sir, I wouldn't say that.
Could have been in '91.
No, not 91. But I would say, I would say that it would have happened right after the fact we found out. I mean, after we started finding out we were having problems and we weren't going to be able to open.
Well, you didn't find that out until October of '92.
No, sir. I had already suspected. I suspected. I didn't know for sure. But we already suspected we were having problems. We already suspected we were having, liabilities. We already knew about those.
But that was shortly before your letter of October '92.
No, sir. When I talked to Mr. Vieta, I already knew that. That was one of the reasons I stopped the workers to.
But you told me you did that in July of '92.
No, sir. I did not.
All right. Well, we'll let the record reflect what you said. And you're continuing to have headaches to this time.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. How often do you have the headaches?
I'd say about 3-4 times a month.
Okay. How often do they last?
I'd say about a good day.
Describe the headache for me.
It's a lot of pain, and I get pain in the back, comes to the front, and then in my eyes.
It starts from the top of your head.
It starts from my neck, and I feel it here in my crown, and then it comes to the front of my head, and then I feel like somebody's putting pressure on my eyes.
Neck to the crown, to the forehead,
Yes, sir.
to the eyes. How about the temples?
No, sir. No, not that I really haven't really concentrated on that.
Okay. And what do you do when you get these headaches to relieve it?
I take aspirin.
Okay. You're not on any medication, are you?
Yes, I am.
Prescribed medication?
Not for headaches, no.
Okay. Other than the Metamucil that you talked about earlier, you're not on any medication for your diarrhea, for your stomach problems, are you?
No, sir.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. I also want to mention that my eye starts twitching.
Your right eye?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It twitches a lot.
Okay. When did you begin experiencing loss of sleep? Would that be at the same time, at about the time you found out?
Yes, because basically my wife and I would argue, and she would make me, she would go into a frenzy about not being able to open and the competition. We'd start arguing about it, and I wouldn't want to hear it, and I'd go to sleep mad, and I couldn't go to sleep.
Okay. And has that continued to this date?
It still does.
Off the record.
That's truth and justice, Mr.
Now you keep referring to when you found out, that these symptoms all began when you found out. Now, what are you referring to? When you found out what?
When I found out I had a problem with the facility.
Okay. And this occurred at or about the same time that you began having problems with the bank?
No, sir.
shortly after you began having problems with the bank?
No, sir, I wasn't having problems with the bank at that time.
Okay. When did you begin having problems with the bank?
I began having problems with the bank when it started taking longer than it should have to open the facility, and I couldn't operate, and I started running out of funds from the facility that I'm operating right now.
Were you able to determine over the last couple of days when you quit paying the bank?
I think it was sometime in January, February
Of which year?
of '93.
Has that also been a source of tension and distress to you? The problem that you got with the bank?
The worries, yes, sir, not being able to pay them.
That's also been a cause of the excessive arguments that you've had with your wife?
With my wife, the excessive arguments that I've had are basically the fact that she claims that I should have been more careful, and I mean, I should have done more, and I just can't think of what else I could have done to prevent this. And then every time we pass by the 23rd and we see the building, that's
Okay. But my
constant argument.
my question is part of the arguments the excessive arguments that you're having with your wife have to do with the problems that you're having with the bank and meeting the note or not paying the note?
No, not really, because we know. I mean, the argument all has to do with the fact that I made a wrong choice, and that because of that, now we're not going to be able to pay the bank.
Okay. Right. So that does play some role in the arguments, the fact that you owe money to the bank and you can't pay it.
The fact that we owe money to the bank and we can't pay it, but we don't argue about the bank. We argue about the fact that we can't operate. We argue about the fact that there's competition, that we're not.
Okay.
Nobody's gonna. What are we gonna do with the loss of? When competition's in, it's gonna be too late.
Okay. So there's other reasons for your excessive arguments. That's my point.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you also indicated that there were you apparently have the burdens of running your business, your existing business, over at the other location. That's still a problem, even in ordinary times. Would you agree?
I wouldn't say it's a problem.
Well, I mean, you have inspections that you got to comply with. You've got employee personnel problems that you have to deal with. You've got complaints from clients that you've got to deal with or prevent. There's a payroll to meet. Wouldn't you say that all of those things weigh heavy on your mind?
No, sir, because it's a job, and I consider it a job. And when I leave, it's a job, and when I go home, it's not. I leave my problems, my business problems at home, at the business, and I concentrate on my family at home.
Okay. So why isn't that the case with this matter here?
Because with this matter here, my wife is constantly reminding me of the problem, and every day that's gone by and what's going to happen. She's constantly wanting to know, she's constantly reading the newspaper, and looks at, the first thing she's always doing is looking at the ads and who's looking for RNs from our competitors, and who's going to open up another facility. And just recently, 2 facilities have opened, one in Donna and one in FAR, which is right next to where we're at, and that adds 4 facilities to the city of FAR, which is a big threat to the city of McAllen, because we're the only ones. And she's already telling me that somebody has already had to have the idea that McAllen is going to have another facility, and we're not going to be the ones here. And that makes her angry, makes me angry, and she's on my back. And that hurts.
Okay. So that has to do with the running of your business, right? You got competition from other sources. They're taking away your business. They're taking away prospective employees, that sort of thing.
That's not running the business, sir. That's the fact that we have not opened a new facility, and that hurts.
And all of this is due to your inability to get a permit? Correct? Is that correct?
Excuse me. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, it's 12. Can we go ahead and bring questions?
Sure, that's fine.
Right, sex associate.
Okay, Mr. Flores, I may have asked you this before, and excuse me if I have. I just want to make sure that I know of all prior hospitalizations or subsequent hospitalizations that you've been involved with. And when I say prior, I'm talking about hospitalizations before your gallbladder operation that took place in May of '92, or any hospitalizations after that point. Have you been hospitalized at any time before?
For, are you talking about for like the emergency room and in and out, or are you talking about the length of time?
Or anything?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I want to know all the times that you've been hospitalized.
I can't remember all the times, sir. It's been a long, long time, various times.
How many times have you stayed in the hospital overnight?
I can't recall all the times. I've stayed in 4th grade when I had my appendix taken out.
All right. Have you been in the hospital overnight at any time after the 4th grade and before the removal of your gallbladder stones in May of '92?
I can't recall.
You can't recall?
I don't remember. I mean, you're talking about the lifespan. I don't remember all the times I've been in the hospital. I have gone to the emergency room before.
Okay, but listen to my question, okay? My question is, how many times have you spent in the hospital overnight? At least one night.
I can't recall.
Has it been more than 2 times?
I couldn't say. I don't remember.
Well, who could tell us?
My doctor.
How am I supposed to find out if you can't tell me who?
Mr. Guerra, I don't remember how many times I have stayed overnight. I can tell you that I haven't had any stays in the hospital since the day that I was hospitalized for my gallbladder stones, and I hadn't been hospitalized in the hospital maybe 5 or 6 years prior to that, overnight, that I can remember.
Okay.
And I can't remember anything further back.
Where was your appendix removed? What hospital?
Edinburgh Hospital.
Can you state with certainty that you haven't been hospitalized overnight on any more than those 2 occasions that
No,
you told
sir,
us
I
about?
cannot.
How long have you lived in McAllen?
Council, in the interest of trying to be helpful and take it merely as a suggestion, rather than asking how many times, maybe we could approach it from the standpoint of what he remembers being hospitalized for.
Well, at some point, I'm going to have to find out at what period of time we're talking about, but that's fine. You've indicated earlier that you, I think you said you were born in Edinburgh.
No, sir, I was born in McAllen. I was raised in Edinburgh.
Okay, that's right, you went to high school in Edinburgh.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You spent the greater part of your
Life.
life in Edinburgh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long have you resided in McAllen?
I'd say since 89, I think. I'm not positive. 88, 89.
Where were we living before that?
I lived in Edinburgh, and then I was renting in Mission also.
Do you remember the reasons why you may have been hospitalized in the past? Other than the ones that you've already mentioned?
No, sir. I remember my appendix, and I remember some abdominal pain.
When did you have these abdominal pains?
The last time I remember that was in Edinburgh, but I don't remember exactly when. But I can't remember exactly.
I'm not asking for an exact date. Any time period. If you can give me the decade, I'd be happy with that.
In the 80s.
And you went to the, were you admitted to the hospital overnight, or did you go to the emergency room?
I
or
went
what?
to the emergency room,
Of what hospital?
Edinburgh Hospital.
Is that still the name of the hospital?
Yes, sir. That I know of. Yes.
And you went there because you had abdominal pains?
Yes, sir. Cramps.
Okay. Do you recall what diagnosis you were given at that time?
They couldn't find anything. And there wasn't, they couldn't find anything wrong.
Remember who treated you?
It was a hospital doctor. I think his last name was Martinez.
Did you follow up with Dr. Martinez?
No, sir, because he didn't require me to.
You remember what Dr. Martinez's first name was?
No, sir.
Do you remember if he practiced in Edinburgh?
I know that he practices from the hospital. He was practicing from the hospital.
Did- Who was your family doctor at the time?
Reese?
Do you need these?
Yes.